All right, we're going to do some passing data, and we're going to do this with the Go programming language. And if you're catching this video online, this is a recording I'm making in my class, college class, teaches web programming with Go. And you can find the entire playlist by going to YouTube, Todd McLeod. And once you get here, you want to go to my playlists, and then just look for the fall 2016. So here's fall 2016 Golang web programming. And if you have not done so already, stay up to date with my web programming stuff with Go and web stuff by following me on Twitter. And I used to have 2,340 followers, but then last night I tweeted a bunch of shit about the presidential election, and 11 people unfollowed me. They're like, screw that guy. So I won't tell you what side I was tweeting on, because that's over, and we're all supposed to come back together and bury the divisiveness. Okay, so what we're going to look at in this video, the next little chunk we're going to learn, is passing data from a client to the server and how we do that. And so I'm going to pause this video and ask the class the same question I'm going to ask you out there in YouTube land, which is, how would you pass data? How does data get passed from the client to the server? All right, so that's the question. How do we pass data around in a web application? So pause the video with me and see if you can answer that. All right, so maybe that question is a little bit broad, because somebody was like Monty Python me in class. They're like, you mean like what form of data you send or what type of data? I'm like, I don't know. So what I'm getting at is we can pass data, we can get data from a client either through a URL or through a form. And so through a URL, we could append data to a URL. That's one way we could get data. There's the query stream. And so if we look at like URL, not skeleton, but anatomy, there's this really nice image that I always come back to. No, I want to go back to this one. Anatomy of a URL. There's a weird kind of scroll that happens when you load that page. I don't like it. So here's the anatomy of a URL. Protocol, subdomain, domain name, top level domain, path, or the port, the path, and then a query. Anything after this, we could have key value pairs. So, we just assign a value to an identifier, and then we separate them with ampersands. And then we could have a fragment, something after a pound sign, hashtag at the end of it. And those could be used for identifying a certain location within a document or something. You want to go from one place to another place. So that's how one of the ways we could pass data is we could append data to our URL. Another way we could get data from a client is through form submission. Okay, so let's look at some of that stuff and how do we get the data out. So our first file here is we have main.go, and we could ask for form value. And if form value is Q, we assign it to V, and then funct fprint line, and we print that out. So I want to ask you, what is this going to do? So look at this code, and this is going to be another point where we're practicing the Socratic method tonight. This will be another point where we're going to pause, and I want you to look at this code and then reason it through in your head what's happening here.
Attribute from your form, right? That's your
Identifier.
Identifier.
Yeah. So now we're going to look at this page, and several things we could talk about here. And just a little bit of review. We're using HTTP listen and serve, and we're passing in nil. And when we pass in nil right there for the handler, because it takes a port and then also takes a handler. So it takes an address, which is a string, and a handler, right? A value of type handler. And so when we pass in nil for the handler, what's that mean? It means it uses default serve mux, right? And a serve mux, will allow us, if we use handle func or handle, it registers with that default serve mux. So we're using handle func, we're registering this route, and we're saying when that route occurs, use this function. That function has to have a certain signature, response writer, pointer to request, cool. And we're also saying handle. Handle takes a handler, and this is the not found handler. For something to be of type handler, it needs to implement the handler interface, which is serve HTTP what? Response writer pointer to request. That's the handler interface. It needs to have that method. So HTTP not found handler is a handler, and that's what handle wants. And if we look at handle, handle asks for a string, which is the pattern, and a handler. And if we look at HTTP not found handler, we could explore this. Not found handler, when you run it, it returns a handler. Okay? And what it's returning is a handler func wrapped around not found. And not found is just a function with this. But you can wrap it with a handler func, and it's running conversion, right? It's converting the value to a handler func, and handler func has serve HTTP attached to it as a method, which makes it a handler. So that's a little blur. You don't need to understand all that. That was like binary there for a second. That's just like when people talk code that fast, like I just did. You either are nodding your head like, I got it, and there's like this symbiotic relationship, symbiosis between the presenter, who's like, I got it, and the people in the audience who are like, I got it, I already know all that stuff. It's like one person telling everybody else what they already know, and the people who already know it agreeing we are all already know it. But it's not effective teaching for people who don't know it yet. It's like, I listen to training sometimes, right? And it's like, okay, that made no sense. I listen to myself sometimes, and I know it, and I'm like, that was just a blur. So that was the walkthrough about how that's actually a handler. And so then down here in foo, we have request, form value. Well, request, we looked at request before. And so when we look at request, I'm going to go to doc, net HTTP, and go to my index, and I look at type request. Oh my God, Trump's president. Did I just say that? I look at Trump. That just keeps going through my head a little bit every now. Oh my God, Trump's president. Oh my God.
Not until January. No.
Oh my God, Trump's president. Ah! Oh my God.
We've
Right.
got a couple more months left yet.
So request is a struct, and what we used here is request.form value. So a couple of ways we could retrieve values with, from the request. The request is coming back. Remember what serve HTTP does? It has a response writer and a request. This is how the web works. There are requests from clients, and then the server writes a response, right? So we're looking at the request, and we could get values from. Whoa, I went all the way up there. We could get values from the client in a couple of ways. And so one of them is right here. We have form and post form. So form will get values from both the URL and from the form. Post form will only get values from the form. It doesn't get them from the URL. But you got to call parse form first for either of those to work. Okay, you have to call parse form on each of those first for either of them to work. So those are just fields in the struct. And that's one of the ways we could get values that have come back from either the URL or the form, or if we use post form, just from the form. Where'd form go? Dun, 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 from post form data. There we go. Right? So that's it. But you got to call parse form first on those. So the other thing we could look at up in the index is these right here, and we have form value right there. So let me get rid of that. How did I get rid of that? Close it up there. We have form value. What's form value do? Form value returns the first value. Form value returns the first value for the named component of the query. First value for the named component. Post and put body parameters take precedence over URL, query string values. Form value calls parse multi-part form and parse form if necessary. So remember we looked at form and post form, and they both said, hey, you got to call parse form to use those fields in the struct. Well, if you use form value, it calls parse form for you if it's needed. So we could just use form value, give me the form value, and that's going to get the values from either the form body, form submission, or the URL query string. Remember what a URL query string is. That's the query string. So here, when I run this little application, is this making sense?
Yeah, but it hopefully will.
Is it sticking? No, it only sticks when you code it. So do my search showed nothing. But if I drop a Q, put on a query string, Q is equal to I got a %20 it. Oh, don't tell me. What did I just click? I switched tabs. I want this.
Trump's president.
%20 is a space when it's encoded for the URL query. That was such a surprise. All right, see, now I'm going to lose more Twitter followers. I just got to shut my mouth and keep business business. If you do it in a fun way, is it okay? Or have I offended anybody? No? You're all right.
I don't care.
Here, we'll be equally offensive. That's what they say.
It's 2 L's.
I'm just reflecting the insanity of society. It's 2 L's. What do I know? So that's the query string, and we're using form value to pull it out. So I want you to recreate this page so that you can pull something out of the URL. Okay?
Okay.
So that's your first exercise: is rewrite this page. Go do it.